Okay, let's dive in. We've got some material here looking at some pretty big, actually mandated changes in police training.
Yes, significant updates.
Exactly. Think of this as us trying to get a really clear picture of what's new in these training programs, explaining it based on this info.
Right.
So our goal here really is just to walk you through the main new requirements we're seeing in the material. What are they, and maybe why should you, care about them if you follow this stuff?
And it's definitely important to understand these. I mean, training isn't just theory, right? It directly shapes how officers are equipped to respond out in the community.
Especially with situations getting more complex.
Absolutely. These legal mandates, they signal what the priorities are now.
Totally. So, okay, let's jump into the first big shift that the source material talks about. It mentions Senate Bill 1852,
SB 1852.
which mandates quite a jump in active shooter response training. People often hear this called ALERRT training, right?
That's the one, yeah. Alert. And what's really striking is how specific it is. The source says, as of September 1st, 2023,
Okay.
any new recruit in the basic academy, that core training, they must now get at least 16 hours of this ALERRT Level 1 training.
16 hours just on that. Wow.
It's a dedicated block, added right into that foundational course.
16 hours just focused on that one specific type of crisis for every single new officer. That really does sound like a major investment from day one.
It is. But the material shows it's not just for the new folks, is it?
No, you're right. It says the same bill, SB 1852, also requires that currently licensed officers, they have to complete 16 hours of that ALERRT training, too.
During each training cycle.
Yeah, it certainly signals that readiness for this scenario is a huge legislative priority.
Definitely.
Okay, so a continuous cycle for everyone. That level of required, repeated training on one threat type.
Yeah, that feels significant. All right, shifting gears a bit then, what's the next big mandatory training area the source points to?
The material also digs into Senate Bill 1402. This one mandates new training focused on sexual assault and abuse response.
Okay, so moving from active threats to incredibly sensitive situations, dealing with survivors. What does this new training involve, according to the source?
It requires a specific course, minimum of 8 hours. And it focuses on how officers respond when someone reports child sexual abuse or adult sexual assault.
8 hours minimum.
And a really critical piece of this, as the material lays out, is the focus on properly treating survivors. It explicitly mandates a victim-centered approach.
Victim-centered approach. Yeah, that phrasing really jumps out. So the training isn't just about filling out forms, but about the officer's actual interaction, how they support the survivor. Precisely. And the law, as it's summarized here, also specifically requires officers to tell victims about getting a SANE exam, sexual assault nurse examiner.
Oh, okay.
And here's the key detail the material highlights. Officers have to inform victims about this option, even if the victim doesn't want to file a formal police report right then.
Oh, interesting. So regardless of whether they're ready to proceed with charges.
Exactly. Think about what that means. The training is making sure officers prioritize getting victims connected to medical help and evidence collection, whatever the victim decides about the criminal case immediately. That feels like a pretty big shift in the mandated response.
Yeah, that degree of focus on the survivor's choices and their experience built right into the required training.
Right.
It definitely highlights how the demands on officers are changing. The material also touched on dementia and Alzheimer's training too, right? More reinforced than totally new.
Yes, exactly. It's presented more as a continued emphasis, but it fits the pattern, doesn't it? Officers are increasingly expected to handle a really wide range of, human interactions. It requires specific training way beyond just traditional enforcement tactics.
Okay, so let's sort of wrap up this deep dive on these training changes from the source. We've really hit on two key mandated updates, haven't we? First, that specific 16 hours of ALERRT active shooter training for new recruits and required every 2 years for all active officers.
Right.
And second, that minimum 8 hours of sexual assault response training with that really crucial legislative focus on being victim-centered and informing about SANE exams no matter the reporting decision.
And like the summary suggests, these aren't just small tweaks to the lesson plan. They represent clear directives from lawmakers and, frankly, significant investments in getting officers ready for both intense crisis situations and these really sensitive, complex human interactions. It shows how the job's demands are officially changing.
Right. So for you listening, here's something to maybe think about to bring it back to the real world. How might these very specific required training elements, like, say, being explicitly trained to use a victim-centered approach, or getting that regular detailed active shooter training, how might that actually shape an officer's actions in a situation you could potentially see or, even be involved in?
Hmm.
What does this level of mandated, detailed focus tell you about what law enforcement is now formally being trained and expected to prioritize out there?